Hello, everybody. We are back. It's Character Study of Survivor podcast. My name's Tristan Fleur. That is Tyler Climbs, and we are talking about the unbreakable, the unbending, the undeniable, the invincible Coach Wade, the Dragon Slayer himself. Tyler, we are in for an all-timer today.
When we talk season 50, we've been going through a lot of these players that are legends in the game of Survivor, but there are a few that are as legendary as the Dragon Slayer himself, and we have an hour or so to talk about him today, and I am so excited to talk about it.
Yeah, this is going to be a challenge in terms of doing this in
Yeah.
an hour. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna have to move, and this is going to be a Spark Notes version of Coach. If you want to go do a deep dive of Coach, I mean, just go watch all of his seasons. They're all fun. I mean, South Pacific's maybe not the most fun, right? But you get the picture, right? At least Tocantins, Heroes versus Villains, right? Those are the two major ones. Um, so if you're asking who are we, we're producers and storytellers in the sports industry who do sports documentary production, sports media production, and we love Survivor and we love the characters that make Survivor great. And Coach is absolutely one of those characters. We're trying to answer the question of what makes great characters, of which you could probably just put a picture of Coach, right? Great character. Put that in there. That's your definition. So we can stop doing the podcast. Just kidding. We'll keep going.
You're watching.
If you're listening this far, we kind of got you in for a little bit. So make sure to follow us on Instagram, like and subscribe here on YouTube. Be a main character. Be one of those people who's always up to date on the characters that we are talking about. We got a great week for you. We got Coach today, and then coming up on Friday, we have Christian Hubecki, another just all-time character in the show's history.
What a great week for us.
I know. This is the boot order of season 50 was heavily criticized. It worked in this very specific occasion.
It plays to our advantage right
Yep.
now.
Yep. All right. You ready to talk about the one, the only Coach Benjamin Wade?
I'm always ready.
All right. So, Coach is 53 years old when he plays on season 50. He was 37 on Tocantins. And let's start in Tocantins because he is a soccer coach. That's his profession. He calls himself Coach. Maybe the first character to be called by something other than his name that has nothing to do with his name, except for like Sarge in Vanuatu, the general in Marquesas. But seriously, like Coach, you immediately get hit right off the bat that this dude is an all-time character.
Yeah, that he's going to play into his coach character. I mean, that's part of what makes him so unique right off the bat is you're not getting any other character. You're not just gonna get a name. If I said, Tristan, how did you think Ben Wade was on Heroes versus Villains? He'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Unless you're Stacy.
Tyler, I apologize. I don't have any Chucky the Cheese jokes prepared today,
Right.
but
You never know. I'll give you some time.
we'll think about it. But
Yeah.
we get introduced to the Dragon Slayer, the honor and integrity philosophy, the strong survive unless your name is Brendan. And we get into his relationship with Tyson, which is a multi-season arc and relationship. And Tyson is kind of the perfect person to counterbalance Coach in a lot of ways. And we're going to talk about this in Heroes versus Villains, obviously, with their scene in there. But it really starts here. Coach calls Tyson his assistant coach, and Tyson is a guy who loves a bit, right? Goes right for it, and then actually starts to perform pretty well in a relationship with Coach. What makes these two really fit together? Because at the end of the day, they don't really have a ton in common.
Yeah, I think personality wise, they're not very common, but like the energy that they bring to the world, Coach always manifests energy and all this stuff where Tyson's really not doing that. But the energy that they bring, they know that they're on a show, they know who they are as people are similar to the characters they're going to be portraying in Survivor, and they're able to just let that out in an authentic way because that's really a part of who they are. Both Coach and Tyson, if you meet them in real life, which we both haven't, but I'm sure if you do meet them in real life, they're not going to be similar or exactly close to what you see them on any seasons of Survivor, but they have that in them. It's there, it's deep down, and that's where that connection comes, is that energy that they can provide, and they find each other, and yet they're opposites. They're still brought together due to the circumstances of the game and due to just that similar energy.
Yeah. Well, we get into Coach's stories and Coach Chi, two things that make Coach an all-time character and make him a hallmark thing. If you were to ask five people in the street what they remember about Coach, Coach Chi and Coach's stories are two things that you're going to get over and over and over again, right? That's the betting favorite on what you're going to get about Coach. He tells the story about how he escapes cannibals by kayaking through the Amazon, as Jeff says, using his life experience in a kayak during a challenge. Run-ins with crocodiles and indigenous tribes. He has 5 to 8 life or death experiences. I mean, this guy is a warrior, a true hero.
But are these stories true, Tristan? What's
And
your two
that's the best
cents?
part. That's
What's
the
your two
best
cents?
part. We have no idea.
What do you think?
I I honestly don't know
Neither do
because
I.
there's so many things that are conflicting here. It sounds so crazy, right? That you just think about it. And Coach tells the same story over and over again. I almost want to just edit all of them together and see if like the facts line up enough because like Coach is somebody who once he tells something once, he usually doesn't tell it the same way again.
Yep.
Like, if he says it the same way more than once, it's probably more true than not.
Hmm.
It's
But
almost
each
more
time he tells the
impressive.
story, he adds one more crazy detail. And
That's,
by the time he
yeah.
gets on a Survivor, it's this epic story that is life or death.
You think he's mad he didn't get cast as Odysseus in the Odyssey? I mean, this is pretty similar to his life experience.
If he could grow out the beard just as long as Odysseus does, I mean, he'd be a perfect casting.
Matt Damon meet Coach Wade.
Oh yes,
All right.
yes,
Matt Damon on a season of Celebrity Survivor would be pretty fun. That's a whole
yeah.
other can of worms. Um, but he takes out Brendan the Dragon and joins up with JT and Steven. Uh, and then we get to the Martyr Approach episode, which I want to spend a little bit of time on here, which, in my
Yes.
opinion, is hands down the best episode in Survivor history.
It's the coach show in a season where coach is not going to go much further than this at
No,
all.
this is his
Like
boot episode.
yeah, in fact, he does not go any further than this.
I mean,
Um,
it's at Final Five. Like,
yeah,
Coach made it far in this season.
yeah, but this is something we've talked about in the podcast previously. Once you get down in the final five, a lot of times those characters are not going to get heavy edits. This is more on recent Survivor, but in a season where you have a character such as Coach, they're willing to dedicate an entire episode to him to make it funny, to make you remember it, to make you point at him and laugh sometimes, even if it's not laughing with him, you're laughing at him, and that is okay. He embraces it. You get the screeches, you get everything in this episode. Tristan, you said it was your favorite episode. Why is that?
Everything is done brilliantly. From the eagle screeches to the scenes to these just epic shots of Coach walking through the Brazilian highlands, right? You get the pose with him with his walking staff over
Yeah.
his back. I mean, just gorgeous the entire time. And it's so perfect that in this just insane scenario, they take the time and effort to treat this like this is like a movie. It's just perfect. Coach talks about slaying the dragon and going through puberty and becoming a man. And he's like, well, I've already been a man. It's funny. It's serious. It's ridiculous. It's heartfelt at times. I mean, it is just perfect. And it is maybe the best example of storytelling within an episode the Survivor has ever had.
You know the classic movie trope where there's an explosion and the main character, your main villain, is walking away from the explosion. They don't look back at the
Yeah.
explosion at all because they look cool, right? That's kind of what Coach is portrayed as in this episode and throughout the season as well. That Yes, there's a huge mess behind him that he has created. The explosion of his game is happening, but you have this heroic, crazy, wild character who's just willing to just focus on himself, and you're focused on the character rather than the giant explosion behind him because he's just that captivating.
It's truly incredible. And then you have the chimney sweep battle with him and JT, which they call
Oh,
back to in Survivor 50, which is another classic. You know, with Coach, I mean, you can't beat this guy unless he has a physical ailment, apparently, right? Like this is just,
the
I mean,
excuses are flowing.
and then you go to Coach's exit here. He starts writing poems even back then, right?
Hmm.
The haikus in 50 are not new. They go very back to the very beginning of
Yep.
Coach.
Yeah, the pieces are all there, and I mean, once you have this epic explosion in this episode, just the radiation continues to spread throughout the rest of the season. So you get into the next, I think season 50 coach we'll get into obviously later on.
Mhm.
It's very different than your heroes, villains, your South Pacific coach, but it's all still there.
Yeah, and I want to talk about one thing before we get to heroes versus villains. So, Coach becomes a hugely divisive character amongst players and fans at this
Yes.
point, right? My
And that,
dad
that
has
remains
literally,
to this day.
yeah, true. My dad has literally only watched season 50 of Survivor. Don't ask me why. He has only watched season 50, and I was hyping up Coach before the season. I said, Dad, you're really going to like this guy. He's a total kook. I thought he'd be the type of character he would love. My dad is like a huge Jennifer Coolidge fan. He likes some of those kind of crazy characters.
Oh, so you must like Mike White.
Episode 2 calls me and it says, I can't stand this dude. Like I can't stand him. And it's so funny because at the time in Token Chains, right? This is a hugely negative character. People can't stand him, right?
Yep.
Hence why he ends up on the villains tribe in Heroes versus Villains. But over time, he has become a majoritively positively viewed character in his career, which is super fascinating as public perception has gone on. It's almost like a Philip Shepard sort of thing. But even
Hmm.
Philip, I don't think has gotten the amount of public approval and love that Coach has. And Debbie is another person that's like viewed as like this big crazy figure, but still, I don't even think close to Coach.
Yeah, distance makes the heart grow fonder, it feels like. Once you
Hmm.
don't have coach, you're like, man, at the time this was annoying, this is too much, but we could really use some more of this, for lack of a better term, psychotic energy at times where, there's just, it's off the rails, it's wild, you're not going to see anything like it, and you just want more of it.
Yeah, this is a really fascinating thing to talk about, and we can talk about this in our debate section of the podcast. But I, Jeff calls Coach a character a litmus test on if you actually like Survivor.
Yep.
And I think that, I mean, that's spot on. But and we can talk about this later. Like we'll put a pin in this. We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
And let's get to heroes versus villains, where he starts off hot. He starts off real hot. Frog marches Colby in the opening challenge. I mean, that is an opening challenge for the history books, but Coach might be the single best part of that challenge.
I can't believe they let that challenge happen in the first place. Looking back on it now, it's like, could you imagine if we saw that in season 50? Like they were full out wrestling, attacking, pulling each other, dislocating shoulders, like all these things are happening.
Well, I think they
It's
know if they
wild.
did it in 50, Jonathan would just throw everybody on his back.
Sure, Jonathan's too
Fee,
overpowered
fi,
for a
fo,
challenge
fum
like
just
that.
picks up Christian.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
It's
but
like
I
Luke
mean,
Skywalker and Yoda.
yeah, put him on the back, start running around. But it is such a perfect entrance into Coach's second entry of the show because you get to see that energy that we've talked about now for all the podcast on display, the yelling, the fighting, the wrestling. And you have this strong, dominant persona of Coach before you really get into the meat and bones of the season where that starts to break down and you see Coach is not just this character that he's a real human, that you're getting these emotions to him. You're getting this regret, this confusion, this sorrow, all of it. But it starts on such a high so you can take it back all the way down. And sometimes that's what you need for a character.
And in all those things you mentioned, I still don't think you mentioned romance. A little
Oh,
flirtmance with Jerry
no,
Manthe there.
I have not,
Uh,
no.
their bond really forms from being misunderstood villains, which is
Yeah,
a really fascinating place for like this flirtmance to start. And like at the time, like people had thoughts about it, right? Jerry was still kind of an outcast. She's had a similar trajectory to Coach too, where it went from majority negative to now people being very angry she was not on season 50, right? I kind of see it. Like
yeah.
I don't think it would have been bad, Coach and Jerry. Like I kind of see it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that helps. It's a good point you bring up because they did come off of their first seasons with a lot of negativity thrown towards them. Um, and yeah, that's something you can easily relate to on Survivor. So I never really bought into like the whole this is actually gonna happen.
I'm
Even
just
when I
saying
was
I could see
watching
it.
it live, but yeah, I mean, I think there's some lost potential there. I'll give you
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Even though now they're
But
both in very different places in life, but
even though he has a flirtmance with Jerry, his true love on this season is Boston Rob.
oh, I thought you were gonna say himself.
No, after
Yeah,
Rob starts the fire by friction, Coach is ready to get down on a knee right then and
yeah,
there. Um, and then we get to the point where he feels like he's the laughing stock at Tribal. Sandra talks about how he doesn't do a lot of work around camp, kind of insults his honor a little bit. Uh, and Coach wants to quit. And then you get Tyson coaching Coach, a top 15 scene in Survivor history.
yeah. I think so.
He said Tyson says, "Don't wear feathers in your hair. Don't tell your stories. Do your Tai Chi where nobody can see you." I mean, this is a real friend to friend moment here. I mean, Coach is distraught, and Tyson, um, it comes to his aid and rescue. And does Coach follow this? No, but I mean, this is what keeps Coach in the game. And for your service, Tyson, we say thank you for this moment. Not just the humor in it, but for keeping a great character around.
Not what Coach wants to hear, but it's what he needs to hear. And I also
Hmm.
think it's what the audience needs to hear in order to
Yeah.
get on Coach's side.
Is
That
this really
even
the
if he's
turning
not going to
point?
follow this, I think so. I think this is where you really start to hit it because, as I talked about earlier, you start to, well, in this case, literally get the breakdown of
Yeah.
Coach, where you see the real side of him that we just hadn't gotten to see before. And even though you still think he's kooky and doing all these whack things, you understand that behind the exterior that he's putting on is his real self that is a human.
Yeah, Coach is an incredibly sensitive man, an
Hmm.
incredibly sensitive character. And that's something that we see going on in South Pacific in season 50, right? And especially in Heroes versus Villains. And I agree that I think this is kind of the point where people are like, okay, this is just a real guy, too. Like, this
Yeah,
isn't just a character, right? This is a real person. And I
yeah,
think that's what makes a great character. It's somebody who is not just larger than life, but they also have the real personal thing with it. And I think that's what almost makes Coach more endearing than a Philip or a Debbie, because
yeah,
he's based in a lot of reality. Like he shows that side of him that is not just Coach, it's Benjamin, right?
yeah. I think you get some of that from Debbie in Game Changers,
Fair.
uh, but not as
I
nearly as much as
mean,
the Coach. But
I would do the same if I didn't get peanut butter and jelly, right?
it's
Um,
just rough life out there.
But going on this thing about Boston Rob, right? Picking up that point again, he's non-committal to Boston Rob or Russell. He votes for Courtney at a very pivotal tribal council here,
Yeah.
the one that Boston Rob eventually goes home at, and
Mhm.
that throwaway vote for Courtney turns out to be the vote that gets Boston Rob out of the game. And Boston Rob calls Coach a
Little
little
man.
man, which is just maybe the harshest critique of Coach ever. in terms of what is important to coach. Like this is, I mean, you could tell a million people a million things, right? Like uh, this is telling Steph Curry he's a terrible shooter
Yeah.
and
It's
like
like,
genuinely meaning it.
hmm
Like this is what's most important to him in the world. And you just come in with a weed eater and wreck the whole thing.
what? Um,
If you get that reference,
let us know. Yeah, but I think look at I mean, his name, the Dragon Slayer, right? This huge figure. Obviously, it's a reference to his first season, but as you go on, where there's no more dragon to slay, it's this a dragon is a huge thing. And if you slay a dragon, that is one of the biggest things you can do. You're a hero. He's on the villain's tribe already, trying to act like a hero, that it just did this huge thing that's continuing to do this giant game-changing thing. And have someone that you've looked up to in Boston Rob and you've seen his story on Survivor and all that he's gone through, and he's the hero you want to be, and now he's calling you little, that makes you rethink everything. And again, I think that makes the audience rethink everything.
truly does. But he's blindsided by a plan led by Courtney and Sandra as Boston Rob payback. They pull
Yep.
in Parvati and Danielle, and this is what ends up sending Coach home in this tribal council. And it's not just the Dragon Slayer. He then goes on at Ponderosa to form a band called the Dragons with Courtney and JT, with Amanda Kimmel starring in the music video as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are reports that this was definitely not the most like happy Ponderosa in the world, but boy, these people had a good time. I've seen multiple videos of people dancing and partying around at Ponderosa here. You have a band that's formed. I think everyone other than Rupert had a great time.
Yeah, Rupert not so much, but yeah, you get so much of these. I mean, we look back in the season. Look who was at that Ponderosa by the end of the season. It's some of the biggest names in the show's history, and they were all obviously they were all together playing the game, but then they're all together out of the game just being people.
Or maybe they're just really happy to get away from Russell.
Maybe that too.
But
The real sanctuary right there.
all right, you ready to talk about South Pacific?
Yes, but I want to ask you something real quick
Yeah,
first,
go for it.
because I think these are, at least this is the way I look at it. These are the two prime seasons of Coach.
No
What
doubt.
season do you think Coach is really in his prime?
I mean, it's hard to beat his Token Cheens run. It really is. And if I'm even going to say like where's Coach in his prime, I would say it probably starts when he starts telling the stories in Token Genes, right? And it
Hmm.
ends with the talking with or maybe it ends with the Rupert um challenge moment with the bags and he flips off Probst. Like I think like
We
it
didn't talk about
starts
that. Yeah.
like I think it starts and ends there. Like I think that's probably the prime of I actually think it's like in between two seasons. Like because the
Hmm.
beginning of Coach you're like whatever, he's a kooky guy, like you don't really see it. Um and then at the end of Heroes versus Villains, you're like, I mean, he's there, but I mean, so much of the story's gone to Russell and Parvati and Jerry and everyone else, right? That and JT, that you don't really see a ton of Coach other than his moments there. So I'd say that's probably the prime of Coach.
I think it goes back to what I said earlier as well. Well, the distance makes the heart grow fonder. Yes, we're watching Coach on the season, but if you're not getting as much of Coach, when he pops up on your screen, you're paying attention more. You're locked
Hmm.
into every word more. And that's why I think Heroes Villains is actually the prime of his Survivor career
That's
because
fair.
it's not completely focused around him, but the elements where he's in it, it's important. It's funny. It's emotional in a lot of ways, and that's everything you want from Coach. Now he's seen what he looks like on TV. He knows the way they're going to portray him, and he's trying to work around that. And I think he does that in a very successful way with a lot of huge characters on the show around him.
Yeah. All right, you ready to talk South Pacific?
Let's
Because
do it.
believe it or not, this is the season that Coach does the best, but I actually have the least to talk about here.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's Coach is in such a dominant position in this entire game. I mean, say what you will about how he does it, and like we'll talk about it, but like Coach is dominant in South Pacific.
Yeah.
Like he
Something that's
plays the best game.
but something that's forgotten about is I forgot about this until I rewatched South Pacific a couple months ago. But you get into the season and they find out who the captains are.
Hmm.
Everyone is so excited that Ozzy is the captain.
Yeah.
They want to be on Ozzy's tribe, obviously, because he's going to win them challenges. He's going to get
Hmm.
them food, all these things. And Coach comes out, and the people don't want to be on his tribe.
Yeah.
He's the outcast before the season even begins. But he's able to work around it. He's able to use his experience, his personality, his connections with people to work his way in. And once he's in, yes, he's locked. But it does take work to get in, and he deserves credit for
Yeah.
that.
No doubt. And with the original theming of what this season was supposed to be, Coach maybe doesn't have this problem, and Coach maybe wins the game. So instead of Ozzy, if you didn't know, Philip was actually supposed to be the other captain on this season. And I think that's a completely different game.
Oh yeah, totally.
I mean,
Ozzy's,
Christine probably makes wins her way off of Redemption Island,
yeah,
probably.
yeah, yeah. If she's there in the first place,
Yeah.
who knows? Yeah,
But it's super interesting. So he leads this cult, for lack of a better term, um, with religion being like the main thing that drives this group. Um, it's icky, right? Like there's no other way around it, right? Like gameplay fair, I guess, but it crosses a line in terms of like probably what's morally okay for most people, right? But he leads this with Albert, Sophie, Rick, Brandon, but specifically has Brandon wrapped around his finger. Like I don't think we've ever seen anybody in the show Survivor trust somebody as much as Brandon trusted Coach on this season.
truly. I mean, Brandon was bought into every word Coach was saying, and we're getting. I mean, especially in the moment where they're all going out looking for an idol and they've already found the idol, but they're not going to tell Brandon that. Like, you're getting Brandon saying, I 100% trust in Coach. God is going to help us find the idol. Coach is praying to God to help us bring the idol that's already in one of their pockets. It's nasty and it feels
Yeah.
kind of dirty, but you are playing Survivor and it is within the realm of the game to do that. But it's also within the realm of the game for those players who that's happening to not give you a vote at the end, and that's ultimately what happens.
Well, and there's a turning point here, right? It's kind of the Brandon vote where this turns from Albert getting so much of the negative blowback for this to Coach getting the negative blowback for this.
Hmm.
Albert was kind of in the sash mold for really the entire season. And I know it's weird to talk about like somebody as a mold of like a not super relevant character in the history of Survivor, but it was 2 seasons before, right, in Nicaragua. And Albert and Sash are kind of just one person in my brain, to be honest. They're both kind of game bots that kind of just follow people along and make unnecessarily big moves. But anyway, um, Coach has some big moments, right? He convinces Cochran to flip at the merge, which is just brilliantly done from Coach, and a terrible misplay by Ozzy and his alliance here. I mean, first of all, they're bullying the poor guy, right? And second of all, they just treat him like a pawn.
Yeah,
And Coach recognizes this, to which, for a guy that we say all the time is not socially aware, is an extremely socially aware move.
right. Yeah, you're treating that pawn like a king, where
Hmm.
they never felt that way, and now they feel that they have all this power. It's the same thing with Brandon. He sees Brandon as a pawn, but he's going to tell him, "You're maybe a prince, and I'm the king. Like you are my right hand man. We're in this together." When really he's willing to give him up. He's willing to get Cochran out whenever he needs to. Those type of things. So again, within the realm of Survivor, it's good strategy if you're
Yeah.
just talking about strategy. But once you enter the social side of it, Coach just doesn't understand the negativity that he's inducing on his own game.
Yeah, it's the social game that is Coach's Achilles heel here. Like many great heroes, the Achilles heel
Yeah.
is the fall for Coach here. Um, he makes this final three deal with Ozzy. If Ozzy is to re-enter the game at the family visit, convinces Brandon to give up immunity to Albert, then votes Brandon out, says it's in God's plan, wants him to beat Ozzy. It doesn't happen. Coach turns on Ozzy at the final four, and this is where Coach believes, quote, Ozzy poisoned the well against him. I don't know how true this is. I think there's parts of truth to it, right? We know how Ozzy gets when he's upset, and we'll talk about that when we get to Ozzy's episode. But I also think that any person with a pulse realizes that Coach was playing a pretty ruthless game, and all he had to do at Final Tribal Council was own up to it, and Coach is the winner of Survivor, and he gets this probably different edit.
That's a tough road because if he does own up to it, I think that helps. It certainly helps. But I think those people were so burned at that point that you can't just throw ice on them and they're gonna
That's
turn
true.
back to regular. Like, yeah, it'll put out the fire, but they're still gonna be in disarray. They're gonna be ashes still because it's the damage has already been done. Where it's like I'm roasting a s'more over the fire and it's golden, right? That's perfect, exactly what I need. But the moment it starts to burn, you can't undo that. And they've already been burned. You can blow out the fire, but you're still gonna have that charred side of the marshmallow. And even though you can still eat it, it's not gonna be as good, in my opinion.
And then you really get to the point, and I don't think there's any coming back from this when Sophie calls him a little girl that she brought to the end. And like that's her equivalent of a little girl that like a Russell would bring to the end, right? To beat, which never happened. But that was Russell's intent. Um, but really, it is just fascinating. Like, I don't think even if Coach does own up to it, and I know I'm contradicting myself what I said just a couple of minutes ago, but that's such a line. I don't know if you can come back from that.
Yeah, because the way that everyone else sees the game is the way that Sophie's describing it to them. That's all they needed to hear in order to go, yep, that's right, she's gonna get her vote. And Albert on the other side was just giving all the wrong answers, thinking he was saying the right things, and some points being told, please don't say this, and still saying it anyway. So I think that's why the votes ultimately go to Sophie. But um, Coach definitely feels confident he's going to win this game. And if you want me to be fully honest, I think Coach by far plays the best strategic game on the season
No doubt. Yeah,
of
I'm with you.
anyone, not even the final three. I don't even think it's close. But he plays one of the worst social games in the show's history of a final three. It's
Yeah.
that bad. And I understand the argument for those who think Coach deserved to win the season because we're sitting on our couches watching all this happen and watching him manipulate and change people's minds, which is the game of Survivor. But when you're there, again, you're burnt. There's no putting out that fire enough to save what just happened.
I mean, I think Russell personally has maybe the worst
Yeah.
social game ever.
Yeah.
But I'm with you there. Like that's they're a 1A, 1B, right? Um, I mean, I guess you could throw like Clay Jordan in there, but somehow he still
Yeah.
almost wins. So I don't know. It's I mean, the Iceman Brian Heidick just iced everyone out, I guess. But
hmm
um, all right. You ready to get? I'm sure you were not expecting a Brian Heidick mention in this podcast.
Certainly was
The
not.
the parlays are going crazy right now. All right, you ready to talk 50?
Let's do it.
I was so excited when Coach was on 50, like was named. I mean, we talked about this preseason. I said preseason before anything had come out, like with the friends or foes. I said, and I told you, I said a season that Coach wins Survivor would be a good season, and that's why I'm rooting for it to happen.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to work with Coach preseason. 18 people out of 24 said that Coach was a friend in Mike Bloom's game of friend or foe.
And a lot of those people weren't just saying friend, they were saying, I can't wait to meet
Yeah,
Coach. I want to play with Coach to the end.
it's
I'm so excited
unbelievable.
Coach is here. Yeah, I mean, the perception that changes by the time he's done playing Tocantins to entering 50 is insane.
It's almost like we're talking about a different person.
Yeah. Well, a lot of
Like,
ways, he is a different person, too.
that's true. That's true. But it's almost like if Boston Rob was showing up or if Amanda Kimmel was on the beach and you're like, wow, I just can't wait to play with them, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but he begins the season with a Magellan quote, and he says, and I quote, at least Coach's quote, so this is probably a misquote somewhere. Life is for the bold to seize the opportunity when it comes, not for those poor, intrepid souls that stay close to shore, but it is the person that goes out to the storm that reaps the higher rewards. I'm just saying, I think Christopher Nolan really missed the ball with not having Coach in the Odyssey. I'm just saying. But anyway, I think this is actually a pretty fitting theme for season 50. Like if we see how the game plays out, and um, not even in terms of like who the winner is. Like I don't think Aubrey plays a particularly bold game. Like I think she plays a good game, but I don't think it's a bold game. But if you're looking at it in terms of like who reaps the most success, like outside of the game and in public and fan perception, it's Rick Devens, who is the person who doesn't stay close to the shore, who goes out to that storm to reap the high rewards. He's on Big Brother right now and is kind of doing the same thing, literally shifted Julie Chen Moonves's perception of him in like a week. Went from being, I can't stand this guy, this isn't Survivor, to I get it. And this is not a Rick Devens podcast. We'll talk about him. I can't wait for that one either. But because I thought of something today that is pretty fascinating, but that's for a later time. Um, but man, it was so good to have Coach back.
I know we said we weren't going to talk about Devins, but as I was thinking about it, Devins and Coach kind of are similar in how they ended their previous season, where in terms of fan perception,
Yeah,
there's a lot of negativity towards Devins, even though he plays a strong game because he's all over that season.
that's true.
And a lot of people coming into season 50 don't want to work with Devins,
Yeah,
but they want to work with Coach. Where's the disconnect there?
I think Coach is shown that he can't really win the game of Survivor. I mean, he probably can, right? Like, and you can argue if he should have in South Pacific, but I think he has so many blind spots that Rick Devens just doesn't have. Rick Devens will say he's not a good Survivor player, and that that's up to your personal opinion. I say that he is, right? But he's a dangerous Survivor player, and I don't know how dangerous Coach is. He's like somebody that has like a kind of a weird pet, And you're like, wow, I can't wait to see this pet. We went to college with a guy who's in the NFL, Carson Steele, right? And Carson has an alligator named Crocky J that lives in his bathtub. And like it's kind of like that. Like Coach is Crocky J in this scenario. Like he can be dangerous in certain times, but a lot of times he's just like a cool pet that you want to keep around.
Did not see a Crocky J reference coming today.
Can you
But
tell
yeah,
I've been listening to a lot of Bill Simmons? I'm starting to get like kind of Bill-ish with my
yeah,
analogies here.
Billish. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think Devins does such a good job of covering up his holes in his game, which there are holes in his game.
For sure.
When Coach has a hole in his game, it's easy to pick up on. Conversations with D, for example, or Tiffany, where he's just said something that he shouldn't have said, or just negated something he said earlier and just doesn't have that defense ready. The holes are maybe the same size as those of Devons or other players on the season, but he just can't cover them.
And Coach is pretty loyal for the most part, right? In terms
Mhm.
of how he plays, like most of the time he is a loyal leader of an alliance of a group. He's not willing to just turn on people for no reason. Rick Devens is kind of the opposite. His barometer is almost like, is it gonna be fun? And that's a little scarier to play with than somebody whose literal life motto is honor and integrity. Um, how much he falls in that, we'll see. But we get to the fight for supplies challenge where we first realize that South Pacific is going to be kind of weirdly important to this season. In the fight for supplies between Coach and Ozzy, he buries the hatchet with Ozzy before the challenge, but not more than 45 minutes later, they're right back to enemies. Says he never agreed to take the promise to not take the key from Ozzy to unlock the gate, steals it right out from under him after Ozzy has gotten the key off the hook, uh, and says Coach 4.0 will be cutthroat but honorable. I'm saying he is Odysseus. He
Yeah.
just is.
Yeah. I'll stand by the opinion. I see nothing wrong with Coach doing what he does here.
I
If you're a
agree.
survivor, there should be no reason that if you're Ozzy that you're not expecting Q or Coach to do that because Q is also reaching out for that key as well. Let's be honest, Q would have taken the key. It's just Coach that happens to end up getting it before Ozzy can. And yeah, that reopens the wound that they thought they had closed just 45 minutes earlier.
Mhm.
With now Ozzy's back wound that he has from being
He's
up there so
toasted.
long. Now another old wound is open and he's in shambles.
Yeah. Well, and Coach is living his best life for like 48 hours here. I
Yeah.
mean, he beats Ozzy in this challenge. He goes to the Kahlo tribe. He's a hero. He has people chanting his name. He puts his toe ring on Charlie. He locks in an alliance with Jonathan and Chrissy. I mean, things can't get better from Coach until Mike White comes back from a journey where he says that word about what happened at the fight for supplies has gotten out. And this starts Coach's downward spiral, which we follow for the rest of the game.
And it really comes out at the next challenge when he calls Ozzy out for saying all these things and he says, I
In a
like,
somber moment. I mean, they
yeah,
are they
in
are
a
they are
terrible time.
they are eulogizing Kyle, and Probst as coach about what happens. Like, he's asking about Kyle, and Coach completely hijacks the moment, as only
That's how it's
Coach can.
edited. But I don't know if it's exactly how it plays out. I hope not
Yeah,
because it's edited as all right, Kyle's gone. Now let's talk about me and how mad I am at Ozzy because that's more important. That's what it feels like. I don't think that's the intention. I don't think it's exactly how it played out. But just watching it, that's the case.
I kind of hope it is how that played out, just
It
for
would be very coachy, but
just for the novelty.
mhm.
All right. So on the tribe swap, he forms the Honor and Integrity Alliance with Joe and Colby, which garnered millions of tomatoes to be thrown at the screen from Survivor Online fans. Um, but Colby's not totally in on this. We don't actually know this until his exit press. But he has some nicknames, as only Coach can. It's not been since Sophie Clark that somebody had been nicknamed by Coach. And most importantly, you go to Stephen Fishback, the Wizard. You go to JT, the Warrior. Now we get coaches instead of the Dragon Slayer. He's the Tidewalker, albeit briefly, and then he calls himself the Dragon Slayer again.
Yeah.
Joe is the Stonebound Monk, and Colby is the Oakbound Warrior.
Great
And
name.
yeah, look, this turned out lucrative for Coach. He literally sold spots online for people to have a 15-minute Zoom call with him for him to nickname them something. Like, I don't know. Stupid, maybe. Good business move, absolutely. So, power to you, Coach.
You just described Coach's Survivor career right
Yeah,
there.
that is
Stupid
really
baby. Good
that is
business.
really fair.
Yeah.
Um, Anything on these names, or you want to get to the Chrissy of it all?
I think the names don't really go anywhere. I think he was giving other people names as well, Where I thought when we were watching this show live that this was gonna be a really important alliance, that we're gonna have these new characters. They're going to work together, and yes, they do, but I mean, they just never can really stick together. Obviously, Colby goes out not much later, and he works with Jonathan, with other characters that are other players that are similar to his honor and integrity style, but just never really pans out in that way.
Yeah, and then Coach has two moments that are interesting, we'll say. One is like with good intention, and the other is a just bad strategy play. We talked about them both last week or 2 weeks
Hmm.
ago, rather, with Chrissy and D.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear our full thoughts, you can go to those. Um, from Coach's perspective, he tries to coach Chrissy on her bossiness, tries to pull a Tyson, and like we talked about in that episode, because it's unsolicited, it just comes across not as genuine as Coach probably meant it.
Hmm.
And then with D, sticks his foot in his mouth at the Blood Moon Tribal. It didn't have any impact on what ended up happening. I don't think Emily was going even if D bought what Coach was selling. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, it's just again, we talked about the explosion and the martyr approach. Then we start to approach the second big explosion in his survivor career of what happens at this D tribal.
it is truly incredible to watch. So he leads the D and Tiffany split vote, and one of the more chaotic leads up to a tribal that I can remember. Coach can't figure out who is in the middle, who he's even targeting. But he knows D's dangerous, and he knows he doesn't want to tell Christian. But who does he tell? Rick Devens. So it doesn't matter. Um, Holy mess, Batman. That's the best way to describe all this. He tells Devens that Christian are the middle people, and Christian can't find out. But somehow, some way, Coach gets his way, and I guarantee that if Dee doesn't have the title of winner attached to her, this doesn't happen.
And I said this last week too when we were referencing this moment. What's so crazy is that this plan works out. Coach gets what he wants.
Against all
Somehow, some
odds.
way, he gets what he wants. But because there was so much chaos, and that he really walked away from the tides that he was previously
Mm.
walking on, went back and grabbed his sword and tried to start slaying that dragon, in this case D, he's back to his old self. He's back to that explosion from token genes. And even though he survives the initial blast, it catches up to him.
Well, and then we get to the haikus. Here come the haikus.
Yes.
You get the jig with Aubrey. I mean, Coach is in rare form here.
Hmm.
It is unbelievable to watch Coach, and you could have convinced me this was his boot episode, right?
I thought for sure it was his boot
Like
episode.
with everything that happens here, I was just waiting for the counter plan against Coach to be launched, and it just never happened. Granted, we get it in the next episode, but this was really Coach's maybe finest final hour.
Yeah, there's so much there. He's walking around doing whatever. You got people looking at him in a distance saying, "What the heck is Coach doing right now?" I mean,
Even Jonathan,
yeah,
who's like
yeah.
actively aligned with him.
He's like, what am I watching? And it's these characters are literally watching a character that they grew up watching on TV for so long right in front of them come back to that prime form that we see. I think that prime form that we mentioned that we were arguing about whether it was in one of his first two seasons, whether it's in Tokens or Heroes Villains, it comes back in this episode.
We took the
I
Big
was
Brother
there
time
briefly.
machine.
Yep. You hopped in it and you're back to that prime Coach. And again, this is where the audience reaction starts to come back because people are starting to turn on him again. Too much
Oh,
haiku, too much of this,
people were
too
turning
much
on him
of that.
before this.
But I
I
think
think
this is
this is
really where it kicks into
I
gear.
think this is actually the opposite. I think people were upset with Coach at this point, and then I think we got a lot of positive opinion of, okay, at least we got the character side of him back.
I don't know. I think people thought maybe I can see the appeal to Coach, and then this episode comes and like, okay, this is too much. But I see what you're saying there.
I also think that him pairing with Chrissy in double duos probably didn't do him any favors on
Certainly
the
not.
internet, or in his game.
Yeah.
He tries to convince Tiffany that he didn't lead the split vote plan at the previous vote, and when Tiffany says, "Okay, so then who did?" Coach doesn't have an answer,
That's the moment
which
I was
is
referencing
which
earlier.
is great.
Yep.
Um, and follows Chrissy's orders to do nothing, to not do anything crazy. Although it's a little too late for this. Like we talked about in Chrissy's episode, this really shows how much Coach respects Chrissy in her game to not completely blow it up by just being Coach, right?
Hmm.
Like, granted, the damage had already been done, but he does realize that her destiny is tied to him here.
Literally.
Um, and this creates an epic shot of the Coach Chi in the rock formation,
Yep.
which is, I mean, his title shot. It's a top 15 title shot in the show's history. Um, it's just beautiful.
It's everything, and it's what we wanted. We're Coach fans. There's a lot of people who aren't. We could talk about whatever the disconnect is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything you hope for those Coach fans just to see it again, even though you know that it's coming to an end soon because of what he's done to himself. You can't help but just root for his downfall, even though you love him, because
Yeah.
it's just so satisfyingly enjoyable to watch.
I think this was a good point for Coach to exit. Like,
Yeah.
I think if it goes a little further, there's like a diminishing returns aspect here, or it starts to
Hmm.
get less enjoyable. Like, it's like when you make something and you have leftovers, and you're like, the first day, the leftovers are just as good as the first night. And then by like Wednesday, you're like, okay, I'm starting not to feel it. And then by Friday, you're like, why did I make this? I'm never eating it again. Right.
Hmm.
Like that's kind of Coach if he gets like to the final eight in season 50, for example. Um, but yeah, coach is eliminated in 12th place as the second of the double duos. And yeah, that wraps up Coach on season 50, except for him voting for Jonathan at the end.
Yeah, it's a good way for Coach's journey to come to an end. I think it's better than what we get on South Pacific because there was the negativity behind all that he did on the season to get to the end, the strategy versus the social of it all. It was just nice to get the coach that we had seen earlier and also get a more mature coach who now
Mhm.
has a spouse and has kids and is in a different area of employment, but still can bring back who he is. I know, like his family talked about when they watched the season, they would tell coach like, "Why are you acting like this? Like this is not who you are."
It's like
And
something on the TV. It's like the
yeah,
camera just wakes something up in him.
yeah, once it's there. And I think it's something we could talk about with Christian later on as well.
Mhm.
So stay tuned for that podcast. But yeah, I think this wraps up his story in a lot better the way than what we all thought was going to be the
Mhm.
case after South Pacific.
All right. You ready to get into our discussion? Because I actually have a point, and it goes back to something that I said earlier. Jeff Probst has referenced that your ability to like Coach or not determines if you're a real Survivor fan, right?
Hmm.
But I'm going to go one step further. I think Coach is a measuring stick on if you understand what makes a great character. If you're like, why do they cast Coach? You don't understand what a great character is. Coach is a lot of things, and he's a lot of things to different people. He elicits different emotions out of other people. You can't just have a cast of people that are universally liked. A cast of 18 JTs is not going to be a fan favorite season more than likely because there's going to be no opposition there. Or Joe, right? Like you can't have like 18 Joes on a season. And I mean that would probably be the end of the show. But or that's just Tyler Perry's new show. But like Coach is the measuring stick on if you understand what makes a great character. I know that we've watched with people before that can't stand certain people on the show. You know, my family, your family, you know, we've had people in our lives that are like, why do you like this person, right? And a lot of that's like online too, you know, like a lot of the online discussion is like, I can't stand this person. If it elicits that reaction out of you, that's the point. That means you care at least a little bit about what happens.
You're drawn into the narrative of the story based upon the characters that are presented to you. Sometimes that narrative is going to build up these heroes, or it's going to give you a mix with these anti-heroes, or it's going to tear down a villain. And in rare cases, it can do all three at the same time. And this is Coach. So many people are rooting for him every step of the way. So many people are torn on who he is, and so many people just want to see him go out of the game. All three of those things are tying into the narrative of all the seasons that he's on because of the strong character that he is. And you said it. If you can recognize why you love him, why you're mixed on him, or why you absolutely can't stand watching him on your TV screen, you can still feel those emotions, but as long as you understand why and you can respect the fact of what's being given to you, you understand what makes a great character. And that is Coach.
Like there should be a final in media criticism classes all over the place, right? Like if you can understand why Coach is a great character, like that should be the final exam, like pass fail. Like there's no tests the entire year. You just watch Survivor the entire time. You dig into Coach and then you have to write a final paper on him. And if you get that he is a great character because it's the litmus test for people, you pass. If you don't, you fail. Just an
Sign me up for
idea.
that class.
For anyone that is
Sounds great.
interested in anyone who's in academia and is interested on a survivor class, I just gave you your syllabus. You're welcome.
There you go.
Um, how did season 50 add to Coach's story?
I think it kind of goes back to the heroes villains of it all, where again you're starting to get that human side to him. I think
Hmm.
he's a strange scenario where he's disliked in one season, then he's liked, and then he's disliked again in one season, and you need to get him back to that like before he can officially be sent off. And you have the sometimes not emotionally mature in some cases in this, but in a lot of ways he's a lot more emotionally mature. He's more mature as a person. He's grown, he understands who he is. He can still put on this act of coach. And even though you know it's an act, for some people they can tell and that bothers them. Like I know he's putting on an act when he's out in the season,
Yeah.
but it doesn't bother me because I'm just so entertained by it. And it's good to just get back to that coach. To understand what he's doing, to understand that this isn't exactly who he is, and that there's a very rare case where people actually act like this in the real world, but still just to appreciate what you're being given because, again, that's part of who he is. And that part is just expanding when it's put into the show. And it's fun to watch, and it's bringing it back to where we originally started with him with the crazy antics, but also to get back to realizing how lucky we are to see characters like this come across our screens.
What is Coach's legacy? I mean, usually we talk about like what makes somebody a great character, but I think like this entire podcast has been that. But like, what is Coach's legacy?
I think Coach will go down as one of the most divisive, one of the most eccentric, one of the mixed players in terms of strategy and social gameplay, that people will follow that guideline for the rest of Survivor history, whether it be good or bad, because he's everything. He has parts of all things in him. In some parts of the game, he can be social with players. In other parts, he can be strategic, but he just can't be all three at the same time. You just need to take parts of his game and put them together, and you have a strong survivor player, one of the best survivor players you could have. But it's just the chaos of what he brings that I think will be his legacy.
I
What
think
would
he's
you
the
say?
greatest character of all time.
Why?
I, the amount of ridiculous things that he does leaves you endlessly entertained. Like, I get people don't like him. Like, I totally understand why you don't, but you can't look away. And that's the sign of a great character. I mean, if you can't help but watch what somebody's doing, even though you don't like them, that's like obsession, right? At that point, like it turns into something where you just can't wait to see what's going to happen next. And I don't know if we've ever had a character like that in Survivor. And it's not pure villainy for Coach, and it's not pure heroism either. This is a guy who is so eccentric and so full of life and everything and highs and lows and things like that. And I just think that he's the ultimate character. And I don't care if like you're like he's not the greatest character of all time. That's up to opinion. Like I don't care. But if he's not in your Mount Rushmore characters, I don't know if it's legitimate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm
that
not. And let me preface: characters are different than players. He's not a top four Survivor player. He's not the greatest Survivor player, right? But in terms of a character, Coach is one of one.
truly. No doubt about that. Which leads me into my question. You can ask more questions after this, but on every episode of this podcast, we talk about a couple things at the end of the podcast, a couple questions that Tristan has already asked. But one thing we always like to ask is whether the character in question that we're talking about in the podcast is a hero, a villain, or an anti-hero. And we're dancing around the question right now, Tristan. So I'm
Hmm.
going to throw it at you right now. Which one do you think Coach is?
Coach is an anti-hero, in my opinion. I know he's on the villains tribe on Heroes versus Villains. I think he's a tragic hero in a lot of ways. I think he is a misunderstood villain, and I think the intersection of those is a anti-hero. Coach has both heroic moments and he has the villainous moments, and I really think that's where Coach comes to shine
I'm in 100% agreement with you there. For the
for the
first time,
first time in a long time.
yeah, yeah, we've been on other sides of the aisle in terms of this question. But yeah, you just throw a mix of everything into the melting pot, and that's Coach, and in the middle is anti-hero.
Hmm.
Like it's that's kind of just where it all ends up. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you.
All right. That should do it on our podcast with Coach. We're so happy that you came along with us for the ride. We hope that you sound off in the comment section. You get us on social media, tweet at us, tag us on Instagram, whatever your opinion is. Why do you like Coach? Why can't you stand Coach? What do you think Coach is? Do you think we're off base and thinking he's an anti-hero? Make sure to engage with us on Instagram at SV Character Study. Make sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. Go and follow us over on Spotify. We're so thankful that you took the time to talk about, in my opinion, greatest character of all time, the invincible, the unrelenting, the invincible Coach Benjamin Wade. On Friday, we're talking Christian Hubicki, and boy, that'll be a great podcast. Tyler, got anything before we go?
We did it. We slayed the dragon that was the Dragon Slayer podcast.
Sounds good. Well, we will see you on Friday. We appreciate it. Shout out Brandon Donlin.